Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone joining us today. I want to say how happy I am to be introducing our first guest, and I'm honored in this regard to be introducing Sister Tyra Bashir, an educator. And we're going to be discussing a very, I think, important topic, one that has some controversy depending from which perspective you are looking at. But I think it's an altogether important subject that is relevant to us as Muslims across the board. So, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, Sister Tyra.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakallah khair for agreeing to come on board today and to talk about this subject. It will be really interesting to hear your perspectives, your experience, and your advice, I think, to brothers and sisters, married and unmarried, in this particular subject. Wa alaikum salam, Sister Sabrina. Good to see you here. Brother Abdurrahim may be joining us. Wa alaikum salam, Dr. Shireen. Abdurrahim may be joining us 50-50. He's still traveling. I think another travels. Both of us were abroad on separate journeys recently. I don't think Sister Tyra would mind me saying she's just returned on travels as early as this morning, mashallah, tabarakallah. So it's really good to have her on board despite just landing this morning. Am I right, Sister Tyra?
Good day. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, jazakallah khair for coming on board. So the subject now, interracial marriage. What I want to start off by is by referring to the narration that we all know from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about marrying far and wide. And that hadith is well known. We know the ayat in Surah Al-Hujurat, the 49th Surah, ayat 13, about tribes and nations getting to know one another. This encapsulates marriage as well. However, despite knowing all of this, and Sister Tara, I'll ask you to comment on this point as well, despite knowing all of these edicts and these encouragements regarding marriage and marrying from different cultures, ethnicities, and backgrounds, we see in some areas an altogether different reality. Now, while this is about the good, the bad, and the ugly, I want to put this right and centered, because when we're looking globally at the divisive natures of popularism, racism is on the rise. When we look within, if you want to call it a microcosmic scale, the racism that's amongst us as Muslims is something that is a cause for concern, right down to marriage, right down to when divorces take place in interracial settings. Racism rears its ugly head, even in those settings. So we're going to try and cover that whole spectrum, but I want to place that front and center as we go through this particular discussion. Sister Tyra, would you want to comment on anything that I've said in that moment, inshallah?
I think firstly, it's important that we use this platform to refer to anything that we're going to say back to the Quran and Sunnah. Anything that I'm going to relay will be primarily my personal experience, but I think it's important to highlight and define that there are disparaging reports with regards to what is Islamic, what is from the Quran, what is tradition, and what is culture. And that turns into a grey matter. So I think if you and I can be clear as to being more definitive and specific as to, well, this is just tradition, but this is the religion, I think that will offer the audience some clarity.
I think that's an excellent pointer that you've made. As a convert, and I think you know my perspective from previously, as a convert, I'm very cautious and concerned about how culture is placed in front of religion and let's say propagated as being one in the same. And so it's important. Yes, they do often blend. We know that the religion came, and whatever was conducive from our cultures could continue to be practiced and grown, if you like, within the Islamic sphere. But where it was culture that is antithetical to religion or in contrast to religion,
Absolutely, yeah.
we see that there's that blurring of lines. So I think you putting that out there in the first instance is something that is what we're both upon, and it's very, very important to make that demarcation from the outset. Now, those who are looking in may hear things where they will feel, well, I thought that was religion, but actually, in actuality, it was culture. So it will be a learning curve for those who hear certain things for the first time in this particular podcast, in this particular engagement. the Dean is very, very clear. As I highlighted, basically gave a general introduction to that edict, not an edict, but from the Prophet ﷺ, highlighting how we should conduct ourselves as it relates to marriage. When we look at the Prophet ﷺ himself and we see where and how widely he married, that he is clearly our example in this regard. Sister Tyra, regarding the Prophet ﷺ's marriages in that respect, do you take from that the interracial nature of marriage, looking at how the Prophet ﷺ married Aisha, before that Khadija, wide, Sophia, Maria? What do you take? What lessons do you take from the prophetic example, from the Sunnah?
Definitely the fact that he married wide and far. There were benefits, not just genetically, to marry so that it makes your lineage more stronger. It was for, to unite tribes. It was to unite maybe factors where there needed to be some type of reconciliation between kings, empires. So it was a matter of making peace. And what he did is he obviously married far and wide, from Somalians, Sudanese, Arabians, non-Arabs, people of low class who had no kind of lineage, no heritage of any prestige, marrying the lay person. So I think doing that and sticking to the hadith where you marry for the 4 reasons, he was a depiction of that. That was an advocacy that he had. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter your status, your wealth, and through all of his wives, Allah be pleased with them all, we have a great teaching from them all.
Absolutely, and I think the reference you've made there, I think, is important, because sometimes when I've had discussions with brothers, podcasts, we haven't actually covered that particular aspect, the strategic reason for marrying. Now, brothers and sisters, guests who are watching this now, we're not saying, right, let's all get strategic and we are kings and rulers and belong to tribes. But that was a factor that Sister Tyra has mentioned. And that was not peculiar to Islam in itself. We saw kingdoms, we saw it in Europe, marrying strategically for peace, bringing tribes together, and the like. So the Prophet ﷺ's marriages were for a number of strategic reasons that we need to learn from in that respect. Bringing it now to ourselves, though, we've got the perfect example in the Prophet ﷺ. Bringing it to ourselves, do we marry strategically when we are deciding on a spouse? Is it a strategic decision of sorts? I suppose there is an element of strategy in there, but is it clinically just that?
So I'm
What do you
smiling now. I'm going to
think?
throw a pebble in the water. So for those who obviously they don't know me, but I think I need to set some pre-context. I'm a grandmother of 2 beautiful grandboys. I'm a mother, I'm a lecturer, I'm in my 40s. So when I'm talking, I'm not talking from, a young girl or young woman's perspective. I'm talking with experience. I didn't stand out there at the age of 17 when I married my husband at that time, who was 12 years my senior. It felt like the perception they had is I stood out there, on the street corner with a placard saying, I want a black man. Forget the Islam. At that stage, there was nothing there to say, I want a good Muslim, because that was not connected. It did not correlate with a black man. The affiliation to that black man at that stage was ghetto, yardie, thief, robber. So I didn't stand there with a placard saying, these are my stipulations. I want a black man. There was no strategy. I was 17, going on 16. I thought I knew it all. But I wasn't arrogant, but I did not know what I was looking for. I was 17. But what I did know is the brother introduced a level of Islam that was pure. There wasn't an elements of culture. And I fell in love with that. I remember meeting this brother on a Monday, marrying him on a Sunday. There was no, mills and boons, let's go running in the fields, none of that. Let's take out the sugar coating. For me, it was that the strategy was, whoa, that's Islam. I'd never been practicing before that. So it was like my Islam at that stage was I come from a non-practicing family, but I don't have any recollection of my mother and father not praying. They are godly people. I don't remember them not praying, but I am the only one out of my siblings, a family of 8, who is praying, who I would like to consider submits. So there was no strategy. I was 17. I was actually in love, not infatuated, because I still am. How many years later? My son is approaching 26. I still have that fire in me for that deen, or even more so now than I did before, because I'm still learning. My strategy was, there's a hole in my life. There is a gap in my life. So what's the purpose? And I was very athletic at that time. I still am. I like to exercise, kickbox. And I was like, is that what you do? Wake up, go to college, go and train, and then go to bed. What was my purpose? So my strategy was that love for Allah. Where does it take me? What does it consist of? How am I going to attain it?
I think that's an excellent focus and strategy. And if Hassan can put Dr. Shireen's point back up, because that fits, I think, with what you've just said. Dr. Shireen is saying it was a factor that people do get married strategically for a reason, not necessarily political strategies. People have various preferences. There's nothing wrong with it. I agree entirely with her. You've just highlighted there. I think those words that you've just said were very powerful. That your belief in Allah, you wanted to see where that took you, and what you saw in this individual, contrary to perceptions that are still some of them prevalent today.
Mhm.
A non-black sister, Asian, white, Arab, wants to marry a black convert. I assume he was a convert that you were talking
He
about.
would say he was a revert. He was just misguided. He came from Rastafarianism. This brother was hardcore Rasta. I'm talking about on the dance hall. He could sing. We recollect ayat from the Quran. He recollected Barrington Levy, Half Pint, just like that from the old school reggae singers. But when I met him, it was strictly Quran and Sunnah. It definitely
Right.
wasn't. There wasn't any culture. So, for example, when we walk down the street, you've got to walk 10 paces behind me. That's not me anyway. I'd be 10 paces in front of you. That's the kind of woman I am. I just saw an essence from that deen that was not tainted. There was no grey matter. And we know Islamically, the Prophet ﷺ has said, what's clear is clear. What's not clear is not clear. So stay away from it. Ishtanibu. Stay away from it. So you don't even go into the middle area, because it gives you areas for concern. But I'm going to interject where you've said, did I know what I was doing? How can a 17-year-old know what they're doing at that age, when you've been in a culture that is full of preconceptions, traditions, a mixture of the Indo-Pak culture, and being raised with Jamaicans all my life? That was a big kind of contributing factor to what I believed. I knew there was something out there. And I don't know if I told you Abdulhak before as well. This is something that makes me feel really emotional. I always knew that there was something out there. I don't know what it was, but I knew there was a supreme being. My whole life, I dreamt in black and white. I dreamt in black and white until I found Islam. And this is prior to meeting my first husband, who brought the deen to me. And from the time I made my wudu, I learned how to pray. And you know what it's like, Abdulhak, when you first revert, you don't know what you're saying. So you've got this book or this Quran on the floor, and you're like trying to recite from it. Your recitation's really off, but you're trying to recite, and you feel this different khushu, this love for Allah. From the time I made my first salah, and I know now I made so many mistakes, I started to dream in color. Wallah, I started to dream in color, and I began to fly in my dreams. For me, I'm not saying I'm somebody, who's like Sufi and mystical. It felt like I had found something in the form of clarity. There was clarity in my sight. And I knew that that was the deen. That's what completes me. A man cannot complete me.
Mm. I'll clarify the point I meant here, where saying, no, you're right, from a young age, but you can say that also 25, 30, even some in their 40s, still seeking, not clear, especially when reverting, converting, Muslims coming back to the deen, non-practitioners coming back to the deen, where there's an idealism that we all have. And a number of us have that, who have been raised in the West particularly, okay? That idealism is that we look at the deen and try to practice it according to what we're reading, what we're hearing, seeing on social media.
Mhm.
And I've discussed this in previous episodes before in this show and others. And that idealism and that enthusiasm, that activism, we're not saying that's wrong, but we need to understand, and it's a pity that some of us, maybe you, me, didn't have elders who could tell us you're going to go through this stage until you contextualize that idealism, what you're reading, that you contextualize it within the climate in which you're living. So we know,
Mhm.
for example, about we can marry white, we can marry from different cultures.
Mhm.
What was our preparation with regards to
None
learning
for
other
me.
differences? Yes, likewise, learn it,
Mm.
because what we did, tell me if you agree with me, Sister Tyra, what we did is we put the dean at the front and said the dean has the answers A, B,
Yeah.
C, D, and it overrides and it supersedes and encapsulates everything. And that idealism drove us into marriages. That short term, you've met the brother, you've
Mhm.
married. We know
Mhm.
that meet once, if you decide marry, not that process of getting to know the individual in that a permissible
Mhm.
way and everything. So that took place, and then we realized that while it wasn't the dean that was at fault, it was
Mhm.
us who was in the marriage because we hadn't contextualized. We were living an idealistic understanding of the religion. And
Exactly, and
when,
that's why I said Mills and Boons. What was
yes,
my perception of marriage? I did not
right,
know what my rights were. Um, I married as a second wife at 17. I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue. So I didn't have the knowledge to understand what my rights were, what I could say, what I couldn't, timing. Polygamy is a beautiful thing. It's unfortunately, I've got to be very careful of what I say. It's the
it's
people
misused. It's
that
misused.
practice it
Yeah,
that may not do it justice. That's what it is. It's
yeah,
there for a reason. If the best of creation, alayhi salam, can do it. So at 17, I didn't know until a few days later when I heard from, at that time, the co-wife. I was the second wife. To be 17 and to leave your whole family. So to give you some context, my father, he relieved himself of any waliship from me from 17, which was detrimental until today. Because can you just explain what a wali is, and then
yes.
I will continue.
For those who are unsure or unaware of the waliship, that's a guardianship. Okay, every female has or should and should have, be it from if it's a Muslim family, you would have that, and you've got fathers, brothers, uncles, and in the absence, it starts with the father. If the father's no longer there, it goes to the uncle. It can go to the older brother, and they form I'll use the term guardianship. I don't want to use
Mhm.
protectiveness. That is there because today we're seeing that the ghaira of a man or the protectiveness of a man is being pushed to the side, and you've got
Yeah.
this. We don't need so, but waliship is exactly that. That
Mhm.
guardianship.
Mhm.
Not the misconceptions they're hearing about. Oh, you can't put one foot forward. You can't do X, Y. No, the the sister, the female, has that chaperone, that reference point, who can navigate in areas of marriage, can navigate in these particular areas to ensure that the sisters, the wives, the daughters, the sister that he or he is responsible for is best represented. Have I done justice to that explanation, Dr.
Absolutely.
Tyler?
So absolutely, but I didn't have that. So at 17, I wasn't arrogant. I was somebody who really loved the religion, and to understand that my father had relieved his wallyship over me. I think that broke me from then, because I was trying to fight it and explain to him, it's the religion I love. I don't know this man, but if you could honor it, and I wasn't marrying a 17-year-old, I was marrying somebody who was known in the community, he was respected, but I needed that protection of somebody who was wiser, who had foresight and could protect me. You didn't want to use that word protection, but that has meant a lot to me, because since my father relieved himself of protecting me, I have become my own protector. Everybody knows, and I'm going to be controversial, a man wants what he wants when he sees it. I'm being
Mm.
brutal. Yeah? You can
No,
say,
and
you can
yeah,
know as much Quran as you want. You can be a preacher, you could be a sheikh, a alim. That does not protect a sister when she has no one
right.
to guard her. So I think we need to be clear there. From 17, I've had no guardian. So already that's given me a sense of fragility, a sense of being vulnerable, because then that gives a leeway to a brother to do what he needs to do with a sister who has no one who will guard her or to remind her when she falls short with her husband. Let's get
And
that right.
can I address, because there's some very important things there, and I think in reflection
Mhm.
as a convert early on, one of the things that I think that many of not just converts, many brothers did. Sister Ty was speaking of something really important, and as we're talking about interracial, and many of us converts, when we came into the Muslim faith, it was a shock for us, and I know for those who were seeing us embrace the faith, because, like, for example, myself, I didn't interact with the South Asian or any Asian communities at all in before I became Muslim. My network, my friends were black, white, Mediterranean. We only had one South Asian amongst us, and he was the one, alhamdulillah, he wasn't practicing, he was doing all the things we were doing. I'm not going to mention his name, Hafidahullah, who, when he saw us searching, then went and bought us the English Qurans and said, this is what Islam is. And we said, no, it's not. It's for Pakistanis, it's for Arabs. And he was
Yeah.
patient with us. He didn't know much himself. But the point I'm making now is that when many converts and those who are coming back to the deen see that there's a cultural, but above that, religious parameter within which to operate. And some of the brothers see a sister from that culture, and the sister likes them, and they like the sister.
Mhm.
Then what happens, which still goes on today in various other aspects, not just
Mhm.
this, they
Mhm.
then try to make sure they can find something religious that fits their desire,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Yeah.
So what happened in the 90s, what happened in the noughties, I don't know if it's happening now. Those of us who've got children born in Islam as converts are now, the pennies dropping, like, I wouldn't want that to happen to my daughter. So what would happen is you'd get imams, or I'm not going to say students of knowledge, but in some cases that happen, nullifying or finding cause to nullify the wilaya, the waliship, the guardianship
Mhm.
of that cultural traditional parent, because he may be Hanafi, he may be Sufi, he may be Barelvi, even if he was Sunni, but then you brought in a statement from Ibn Taymiyyah that, and the hadith, more important than Ibn Taymiyyah, the hadith that if a man comes to you and his deen is good, then you should marry him to your daughter, lest fitna would be would spread across the land. And this was being used as a battering tool to say, right, I don't care if you're the father saying to the father, the brother, no, I want to marry your sister. The sister would be saying, I want to marry. Here's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. You're going to cause fitna in the land. He's got good deen. And what would happen is there'd be an
Mm.
erosion of the waliship, an erosion of that traditional guardianship. And then the brother who wants to marry the sister would say, I know a brother. I know a good brother. So
I've
that brother,
witnessed that so many times, subhanAllah, so many times. I was talking to one of my longest friends from childhood. She said the same thing. You know, she didn't even know. She can't recollect who her wali was at that time because it was the same thing. But she came from a non-Muslim background, so there was no guardian there because they deemed her father, because he was non-Muslim, somebody they didn't have. She couldn't have him as an advocate. He's out. He's not even Muslim. I had the same thing, even though my first husband, sat with my dad. My dad relinquished his rights as a wali and made it clear that day that if I wasn't there, but he made it clear to my husband at that time, if I was to pursue the marriage, I would be deceased to him. He would
can I come
no
in there?
longer have rights.
And there's an important,
Go.
there's so many parallels that we're talking about that are important here. And what Sister Tyra was speaking about is a reality. There are other fathers who've said, and the reason for it, I don't know with you, Sister Tyra, but I'm going to speak about other reasons I know. The
Go for it.
reasons why the parents have said, we're not going to be wali for you at this point in time, is because of the ethnicity of the individual. That in itself is a problem, that it was a racial reason why the father, the uncle, the brother's like, I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah,
So
my dad was
both,
brutal. He just said it to his face. You're black.
yeah,
My
yeah,
dad is my dad. He'll say it
both
how it is.
both avenues are problematic.
Mm.
The racial one we know about, but even with us as individuals now, and I want the brothers and who are converts, the brothers who are reverts, who had this sort of experience and felt there was nothing wrong with it. If you have children now and you've got daughters now, would you let the same thing happen that you witnessed? We may be supported.
Never,
We may be
never.
we had excuses for. Would we allow that to happen if someone came and he was on the sunnah and he wanted to marry our daughters, but we thought, no, this individual is not suitable as the guardian, and then he went and found reason, reference, scholars, and said, I'm going to marry your daughter anyway because the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it nullifies your waliship. I think some of us brothers with the backgrounds that we've got, I think we know what road would be going down, and I won't spell that out. So
Yeah,
there's a
you cannot
contradiction.
strip a
There's a,
man, a
yes,
brother, a Muslim. You cannot strip that brother from whose loins a creation has come. He has begotten a child, and you're going to strip this brother of his fatherhood. You no, now I am my age, without dropping hints as to being a grandma. Nobody had a right to take that from my father. Nobody did, and I wished he would have fought for me a bit more. Otherwise, I think that would have alleviated the hurt that I have now.
right. And Sister Tyra, I say this, and I agree with you, and I say to brothers, and I'm reflecting myself, even if the reason for the father saying no was racism,
Mhm.
still, brothers, that is not the premise on which we say it's a haram.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
there's got to be a patience. There's got to be a working towards things. I know individual, and I'll share this. I know some of my friends, my brothers, were in a similar situation. But what did they do? They continued to meet the father at the masjid. They continued to speak with the father. The father was reluctant. The sister was patient. Then the sister's mother would get involved. If she was negative, she may come round
Mhm,
before the father, or the father may come round. And the brothers were really patient. Now, if you see the relationship between the brothers and their father-in-laws, and when and I can say, mashallah, tabarakallah, I'm happy to say my ex-wife, and I was in plural marriage, Pakistani heritage. When the father showed the pride he had for me, he was educated. He lost some friends. When I came into the house one day and he introduced me and everything, and he was proud, and this is his master's studies, this is what he does, he's a chairman of a mosque. When I saw my father-in-law the next time, and we didn't always get on, but when I saw him the next time, he told me, you know, that individual was around. I said, yeah. He said he's never going to be my friend again. I told him, get out. I don't care. I'm proud of my son-in-law.
mhm,
And I can say with pride that despite the challenges that we had in the initial stage, and it wasn't to do with racism,
mhm.
I was by his deathbed, and was the last one to recite Quran to him before he passed away, when I stayed with him
MashaAllah,
overnight.
tabarakallah. Allahumma barik.
When he rahimahullah, when he collapsed, he was asking for me. When I turned up and there were hundreds of people visiting him, and there was this black young brother with his newborn sitting there with him, and everyone was looking and thinking, whoa, who is this guy? And actually, Abdul Rahim was he was the individual who introduced me to the system, mashallah. I'm glad he's come on at this particular point in time, mashallah. But so the point there, welcome, brother Abdul Rahim, assalamu alaikum. But the point there, Sister Tyra, is that, and I'd love to hear Abdul Rahim's point on this. Abdul Rahim, I'm referring to the old days when wilaya would be stripped from the father, even if it was a racist reason. I'm talking in the cultural marriages, and the sister would then be assigned to another brother or an imam, a righteous student. And you know that the foregone conclusion would be, this is just to rubber stamp the two of them getting together. And the sister would then be stripped from her, or broken from her family, because she's done something which culturally they could have never fathomed, that they'd planned daughter to be married abroad, or within the culture that they were in. We're not just talking about Pakistani now. We're seeing it in the Somali culture. We're seeing it in Arab cultures in that regard as well. And the sister was then isolated and became literally there under the husband's protection, or not, abuse, disregard. And he knew it. He knew it. He knew that there was no one else there now. And that vulnerability that Sister Tyra has spoken about is one that.
Can I interject? And don't mean to leave
Go ahead,
Abdurrahim Green
please,
out.
please.
So that was the element. That was the most important thing. If I could rewind the clocks, I would want my father to have fought for me. I would have wanted him to protect me, because once that brother, which is my father, who stepped down from the waliship, he opened the doors to so much for me. Because if the father can treat me like that, it opens the doors and gives a platform to any brother to do what he wants with me.
Right,
I have no rights with a brother, because who do I go to? And
right.
at that time, you need to remember, I was 17. You couldn't go to the Imam. The Imam would be telling you, don't marry, he's black. Nothing to do with Quran and Sunnah. He could be a hafid, he could be a sheikh. At that time, it opened up, and still today, I don't have a wali because my father stepped down. So if I was to remarry, it gives that brother the opportunity and the platform to do what he wants, because where am I going when this brother decides he doesn't want to give me my rights? He doesn't want to, or he wants to favor one wife or another wife. I have to submit and leave it to Allah. So Allah is my wali in more ways than one. But ikhwan, Aki, it breaks a sister. If you don't have that iman of la ilaha illallah, knowing the essence of what that means, it can break a sister. Not everybody is as strong as me. And I'm not strong. I will cry. I will have to get up for tahajjud because I feel hurt, because I have no defender. I have a beautiful, strong son, an older son who's 26. I have a foster son and I have a new baby. And they're limited in their deen because they are millennium babies. It's cool to be Muslim right now. They don't have what we call the dawah, the concrete dawah, to know what the rights are. So from the time my dad stepped down from being my father, I've had systematic oppression.
Challenges in
Even to the point, to oppression to the point that when I remarried and I have a baby called Yusuf and his father, Allah be pleased with him, I married him and he told me my mindset was so negative because I was on a defensive. I was on guard. And symbolically, you couldn't see it, but I walked around like this. I walked around like this because brothers see this, don't they? They just see this. They don't see what's in the heart. They don't see what you've been through. I can recollect things that honestly would bring me to tears. I remember the Asian community running behind my buggy, and my son Malik, Allah preserve him. They would run behind my buggy and say, "Oh, look what she's created. Look at the monkey," because he was half black. They would actually get the children to run in front. And in those days, you had the brick phones. It took a while to get to the photos, like to get to the camera. Not like now where you just press it. They would take photos of my children. Look at the monkeys she's created. I had private investigators waiting outside my house because I was one of the first sisters to, they call me the runaway. I was one of the first sisters to be enlightened with the deen. I may not have done it correctly, but I was 17. Allah have mercy on my soul. But I had private investigators wanting to come and interview me because their sisters had gone missing. This niece's auntie's daughter had gone missing, and they thought that I was a part of this clan. I was given a title where they thought I was encouraging them.
No, that's shocking, Sister Tyra. What you're.
No, that is just that. I don't want to obviously get emotional because I'm somebody who, subhanAllah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Abdurrahim because we experienced this with some of the sisters who had the challenges back in the day. Abdurrahim, you're very familiar with the mosaic of Muslims in the UK. Please come in.
I think the thing is, I'm personally, I am hugely in favor of interracial marriages. Yeah,
we are both of us.
The more the better, the more the merrier. However, the sister, mashallah, her story is very, very, very true of a particular era. Yeah, and it probably is still true until today. Yeah, I don't think, unfortunately, it's got a lot better. It has definitely got a lot better, but it hasn't gone away. But the issue that I want to raise is that let's talk about successful interracial marriages, right? I just want to raise a point that whoever's thinking about interracial, I'm not saying this to put you off, and I reiterate, I am a big supporter of it. Allah has made us tribes and nations to get to know one another. I am so proud that even my I'm a pretty mixed up European, like in terms of European, like, I have mixed up European ancestry. My kids are, my ex-wife is Indian, my wife is Pakistani. My eldest son is married an Egyptian. Yeah. My second son, he's married a Jamaican, half Jamaican, half Uruguay. She's like, her mum's from Uruguay, dad's from Jamaica. My other daughter's married a Somali. Somalis, yes. I've got a Somali in the family, alhamdulillah. So like, I'm like, I love it. I love it. Yeah. I think this is the way it should be. It's beautiful. For me, this is the deen being manifest. This is what Islam is all about. We shouldn't see color. We shouldn't see culture. We just see, mashallah, does this person have good character? Does this person feel Allah? However, so I'm just reiterating, I'm a big fan, but it's a challenge. Yeah. Marriage, number one, everyone needs to know, marriage is a challenge on its own. Even if you are culturally identical, you eat the same food, you have the same customs, you have all this, you're all brought up in the same, it's still challenging. Even with everything is equal in that respect. You want to throw into the mix the fact that you have different cultures, you are adding to the challenge, right? Now, me and my wife, we got to the stage where the way we deal with it, and it still exists after, I don't know how, we've been married, probably 30 years, under 30 years, but something akin to that. Yeah. So just under 30 years. But, the way we deal with it is a lot of joking about, we just take the mickey out of each other's culture a little bit. That's what it's all about. I'm the white colonizer. Yeah. She's the mad Mughal. Yeah. The mad Mongol, whatever. So like, we just make a joke because I don't know how else we're going to deal with it. But it's, like we were brought up really differently. Yeah. I was brought up classical, white, liberal, chilled family. Yeah. I could literally do almost anything I want. I could walk out of the door, walk around the streets of Cairo at the age of 12, 13, little blonde kid walking around the streets of Cairo, 4 hours, come home, wouldn't bat an eyelid. Yeah. My kids can't walk out of the back door. Yeah. And we live in the most safest place you can imagine. They can't go anywhere. Right. When we moved to this place, we had to have, iron fences put up just in case you understand. So there's a whole, and it does create tension. It does create tension because your whole mindset of how you're going to bring your kids up is different. And that's a challenge. It's going to be challenging. But you know what, alhamdulillah, I do believe that if you are really firm upon the deen, yeah, that you really are ready always to go back to the Quran and Sunnah, you can put aside, you can just chill with the rest, like it doesn't matter too much. You have to realize that whatever your culture is, it's not that big. It's not that important. Your culture is not really that important. Yes, I know you're attached to it and maybe you think it's important, but it's not. Islam is important. Your deen is important. Your culture is really not. So if you can get over that, then I think the benefits, because it is so fantastic for your kids to be able to really experience two different cultures. That is going to make them richer, fuller, more complete human beings. This is why Allah created us in different tribes and nations. So exactly we could experience this, right? And what a better way to do it than marriage. I don't want to go on too long, but I just want to, sister, this is sad, right? And what do we do, right? People like you, mashallah, sister, you, and like my wife, and like Abdul Haq's ex-wife, and they took the bulls by the horn, and they challenged the status quo, right? They did that. It was a big commitment. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. It's a big thing, but I'm a bit of a rebel. I get angry,
Me too.
Yeah, I don't like, when you say that stuff, sister, that people, the people saying that stuff, it's like,
Yeah, that was
I would say,
minor.
yeah, I would say, this is why I did it,
Sorry to interject.
spit in the
The worst
face
thing
of
was,
people like you. Yeah,
if
go
you're
on.
a woman and you are of like
Yeah.
tone, and we already know that there's an inferiority complex within the Asian community.
Yeah.
Once a woman like myself at that stage or age had been with a black man, you were off limits. You were seen as black man's fodder. And I'm going to be controversial, which left you with some kind of a tarnish or they left you in disdain. And I can remember people saying to me, the young women at that stage, and Allahumma barik, they were younger than me and looked twice as old as me. And they would be telling me, oh, you do know no Pakistani man's going to ever touch you. What, you see me looking for a Pakistani man?
Alhamdulillah.
You see me looking for a Pakistani man? You see me
No,
lining
no,
up?
no. My wife, that's what my wife.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like, you know, you've been with a black man. So
do you see me looking for it? Yeah.
I'm a lecturer,
Yeah.
19th century lecturer, and words for me are very important.
Yeah.
Fodder means something that is a remnant piece of ash that comes out of a cannon when the ball has been deployed. That's what's left. It's rubbish, meaning it's refuse. There's no good that's left from it. For me to be addressed like that or given that label of cannon fodder, I'll take it because it's my status in front of Allah that makes me who I am. That's going to define my success. So alhamdulillah, call me, you know, the cannon fodder, black man's woman, the BMW. We had all of that. We had all of that. But in a good way, my children are now educated based upon my experiences, and they are fighters, but subliminal fighters. They don't know that they're doing it because I never gave them any baggage. I didn't give them any, you know, culture. You know, I have raised 2 beautiful black men, strong men. And they don't see color. My oldest son is married to a young white lady from England. We don't have these conversations because there doesn't need to be a platform for that. But I do make it clear to them, this is where your mother started. And it was hard for me, walking into masjids and not having your salam responded to, you know, the Asian women looking at you funny. And they knew that none of my family spoke to me. None. Of a family of 8, I then began my journey on my own with these 2 children. And people didn't want to return my salams. Look at these monsters she'd created. If it wasn't for La ilaha illallah, I would have lost the plot. I sincerely believe I'd have been sectioned because where was my family? My family became the other sisters like me who had reverted, married brothers out their race and had nobody else because there were cliques. There were parties going on where sisters would stick with each other based upon their tribes or their culture. So us rejects, the fodders, we produced our own little community.
Can I interject here now? Can I come in? I think there's an elephant in the room in this instance.
So bring the elephant.
And the elephant in the room is no, it's a good one in that sense. It's my favorite animal as well. Me as a black man hearing this, okay, hearing it's not because of marriage to white, it's not because of marriage to Arab, but it's marriage to black. And not just yourself, Sister Tara, and what you've said, I admire you, I respect you, how you've raised your children. The resonance I have with both of you as well, who your children are married to. My 4 of my daughters are married. One's married to Ghanaian British, one's married to Indian British, the 2 in Saudi Arabia are married to Pakistani and Lebanese. And what's important here, and I'm going to be honest, Abdul Rahim knows, and Sister Tara, you know from my writings, I'm very, very pro-black, but that doesn't mean I'm anti anything else.
Absolutely.
I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of our heritage. I believe the world that we're living in now, the civilization that we're in, Abdul Rahim and I have spoken about this, has whitewashed literally everything so that black excellence is not even a thing that's even known except amongst some elements of black communities. And it should be known amongst all black people, and it should be known amongst the world, quite frankly. We shouldn't just have a Black History Month because white history is every month. But the point I'm making here, as the elephant in the room, hearing this doesn't diminish or numb me to the pain that coming into a perfect deen, that blackness is subjected to the, I know from one of I'm not going to say who, it's an ex-family membership, we're very close now and everything. When my children were born to my Pakistani ex-wife, I was told they were harami, and I was like, what's that? And then they said, bastard. And I was like, whoa, I've got a family member say, now she's got regrets around that. She contacts me, she loves me, but it's like the wounds that were thrown at you now. As I've said often, Abdul Rahim, you know this, the racism that we as black people, black Muslims experience from white Britain was a lot easier to stomach and palate than the racism when we've opened ourselves up to the deen, coming to the Muslims, brothers, sisters, ummah, to witness this. So for me, there's no resentment. As I said, when I looked at, I had to think: would I let my children marry a Pakistani? Would I let my children marry white? When I'm looking at through the lens of that they look at us at, and I said no, as you did, Sister Tyra. What has happened to experiences we've had is not going to transfer to our children whatsoever. But it's very important. I want to make one thing really, really clear. Sister Tyra said something at the beginning, and I would say, yep, it resonates and it continues to resonate. When sisters from other cultures have decided and chosen to marry black brothers, white brothers, converts, it's because they've seen a purity and a focus upon the deen and the sunnah. We are not bringing any cultural mores that are contradictory, hopefully, inshallah, to the deen in the way that we see that culture from other communities has become intrinsic with the religion. Practices from Hinduism coming in from some perspectives, from Sikhism coming from other perspectives, from Christianity in other perspectives. When we came to the deen, us as converts, and I'm speaking for Abdul Rahim here as well in this instance, despite knowing that his challenges may have been different to mine in some respects with regards to the racism that we felt, we studied the religion because we did not want misguidance of culture to misrepresent it or anything like that. And sisters who married us from other established cultures, I'm hearing Sister Tyra, she's gone through bad experiences, but she's attested to the purity of the individual she married initially, looking at the Quran and Sunnah. Unfortunately, the abstract understanding, the idealism that we had at that time obscures particular aspects, and that's when problems come in. So
I mean, just to point out, just to point out though that you're right. I'm not contradicting what you said, Abdul Haq, in the sense that yes, obviously there are there are people from various backgrounds that have a very, very strong cultural affinity to Islam. So that the merging between their culture and the religion is like it's almost, they can't really they don't know the difference between the two things. They don't even see a difference between the two things. They think that their culture is Islam, right?
Exactly.
That's not to say, by the way, that converts come with baggage. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that they don't make that mistake of presuming that they have, because they have no cultural attachment to Islam. They look at Islam as a religion that has divine guidance from Allah, right? So from that perspective, you're absolutely right. They look at it in a sort of quite a pure lens, and I think it's a good thing, alhamdulillah. It's one of the blessings of having reverts, is that they do have this very, culturally neutral perspective. It doesn't mean they don't have baggage,
Yes.
I mean, we all come with a ton of baggage. I don't even think I definitely, like my wife, like I said, she jokes about it and calls me the white colonizer. And I've been open about this in previous podcasts, where I said that the hardest thing, one of the hardest things to deal with is the whole white privilege. We didn't have a term for it. It didn't exist back in the, whatever it was. But I know I was dealing with something inside myself, right? And there is something real there. And I've said this before, I was brought up in an environment where we were really made to believe that we were superior.
But you do have sunshine blue eyes, and you do resemble Jesus. Their depiction of Jesus is you.
Yeah.
I remember at 17 finding the dean and seeing Abdul Rahim Green for the first time, thinking, it's Jesus.
Yeah.
There was actually a white man, 17. I walked into Brixton, and there was Abdul Rahim Green, and I was thinking, so you
Jesus
can be
Jesus on the member. But I mean, the thing is that
it's Speaker's Corner. I remember even the novels.
I can never be passionate.
I'm standing there because there's Jesus.
Yeah.
Well,
but you did have a lot more hair than Abdul Rahim
the best
Green.
was when I was in Guyana. Yeah. And
my mum
I was in Georgetown doing Wakatan.
No.
Well, what is Wakatan? It means walk about town. So we're going to the marketplace doing Wakatan. Yeah, and this woman says, "Your Lord over there!" It literally shouts across the line because I'm walking around in my thobe, with my hair. I'm bald now, but my hair was all long and blonde. Stop! It's the Lord. She's saying, "It's the Lord." Literally. Anyway, but aside from that, no, look, the serious point is we all come with our baggage, bro. We have to deal with it. We have to deal with our baggage. And I think we all have to be brutally honest about it. Like I think that black brothers can come with baggage,
Everyone.
whatever it may be, yeah.
I have
And
baggage
white
now.
guys and Chinese guys, whatever,
Yeah.
whoever, we're gonna come with baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really, really hard to deal with it. And it just adds to that. I'm just saying as a cautionary tale, if you're gonna get into an interracial marriage, yeah, it's great. I'm all for it, like I said, but just remember that there is that extra level of tension that you're gonna have to deal with. And if you're marrying a revert, as sisters, I'm sure you're dealing with a whole nother bunch of challenges. You are, right? Reverts come with their own problems. Yes, they have that maybe slight, like Abdul hinted at, a slightly sort of that pure lens, but it's still it's tough, and it adds, like I said, Shaitan is working hard, yeah, to destroy any marriage. He's
Absolutely.
working super hard.
Like we
Right.
don't have it hard enough. Yeah, with that.
Yeah. And but sister, I want to go back to this. Like, do I would be interested from our audience to find out. Do we think that things have changed? Do you think that I know, for example, for a fact that there are a lot of people now who are looking for their daughters to marry reverts, and they're not even that fussy like they used to be about what's the color of their skin. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there is a realization, and I think this is something that was put forward in questions before we even started today's show, right? Is that there are people who are realizing that with their culture comes a whole lot of stuff they don't like, right? They don't want their daughter to become a slave to the mother-in-law, yeah, and to learn to be her obedient slave, to do every whim, and even if she's beaten and whatever, and we know this stuff happens, yeah, until she reaches the stage of pure and when she's shown that she's completely subservient, maybe then she will begin to be accepted, yeah. Like a lot of people don't want that for their daughters, right? And they realize that when they marry a revert, black, white, or yellow, they're not going to get that type of stuff, and they're not going to get that type of treatment. And they're looking, and that's good. They want the good for their daughters, right? They want their daughters to, have a better life than they had. So I think there's an awakening. Yeah, I think there is. And I've definitely experienced this. And I've definitely, from people asking me, find me a revert. And they don't mean, by the way, just a white revert. They don't mean just that. So I think maybe the times they are changing, as Bob Dylan would say.
Can I put something in the mix?
Yeah.
Ibrahim, that's really interesting you said that, but I want to say something conversely to that, which is there's after Hassan saying there are about 4 questions in the comments. Okay, we'll deal with them shortly. But one of the things I want to ask as well, both of you, as a consideration, it's there. Can you be married and be racist towards your spouse, or hold inherently racist, consciously or unconsciously, racist positions towards your spouse that surface at particular times?
Tyree, I'll let you answer that.
You know why I'm laughing? I'm laughing because my first husband was like black chocolate, black. And now Yusuf's father, he is black, but he's not black, he's white. He's like from Spanish town, but lighter skin than me. So I tend to tease him about that all the time. Like, I'm tanned, I like, give me a tan. You act like you're Jamaican, but you're white. And I always tend to take the mic in that way, but nothing more than that. I would never. I have a revert sister as well who is white like the day, blue eyes, but we know there's a line to draw because we're so hurt being on the tail end of racism. We know not to do it to others. There's no need. And I think that's where our Islam comes in. We have enough grounding from the Salaf to tell us when to be comical and when to draw the line, because we are going to stand in front of Allah. And that day, it's not going to be what you look like, how much lip filler you have, what kind of hijab you got with the sprinkles on it. Are you making salah with a full face of makeup on? I'm being raw. That day, we're going to stand there barefoot and naked, and the sweat will tell us Some will be sweating to their ankles, some to their kneecaps. I think that day is going to be a reality for us. And I think
I think
we need
that's
to be real.
important. Yeah, no, it's important you've mentioned that, because why did I ask that question? Because I know of individuals, sisters
I
and
know.
brothers,
Yeah.
where the racism has surfaced in comments. If it's a white brother or white sister, they've leaned into their privilege in the way they've spoken about the community that their spouse has come from, or particular
Yeah.
attitudes that they actually have, or
Mm.
with if it's a black brother or a black sister, and they know how to articulate themselves, and it can be verbally, forcefully, with clearness. And the sister maybe said, "You're just like those angry black women," which we know is a trope now, a racist trope. Or if it's a black brother who, like me, expresses themselves, we like to talk and gesticulate, and we know there's no issues with that. Yeah, we get shot by police as a result of it on occasions. But they would then say that the husband is violent. If he's never been violent in his life, in these occasions, never been violent, but because he expresses himself passionately,
Yeah, you're aggressive.
yeah, you're aggressive.
Mm.
And that vocabulary, Abdurrahim, maybe you haven't experienced it. It's happened amongst black brothers and sisters a lot. When if it's mentioned regarding a black sister, then mental health comes to be drawn to mind. When it's mentioned in the violent sense with regards to
Mhm.
brothers, the police and security services are
Well
drawn
said.
to mind. And some of it is willful, some of it is unconscious. But I'm going to flip it for those brothers and sisters from the cultural communities. I've got some wonderful friends whose parents even asked me to conduct the nikah, come into their house, Pakistani parents, to conduct the nikah of their son to someone who was Asian but not Pakistani and was a convert. And in and of itself, that's a problem there. So there are some wonderful families that have really, like the brother who married into the Pakistani family that I mentioned, how he was with the dad and the dad with him and the family and everything still together now. There's some, you know him, Brother Abdurrahim. There's some wonderful examples of interracial relationships. Jordan mentioned the point earlier on that it's not so much interracial, but it's intercultural. I would say,
Yeah.
Jordan, you're right, but there is an element of the interracial aspect. Some of you have pointed to some very poignant examples that you can give in that regard, which is appreciated. But I would say this, and as we're drawing to a conclusion, I think with the three of us all here and our children being married to various cultural, different cultures, interracial marriage is a thing to be supported. Interracial marriage on the whole is positive. As Brother Bilal is saying here, a grounded understanding of what racism is required. And I think I've been hearing about these prenuptial lessons that are taking place between husbands to be and wives to be. And I don't think that's a bad thing. If there's the guardians there, or there's imam, and the imam is attuned to our culture and society that we live in today, I think that there needs to be that progressive understanding between the couple with the families involved before they take the step, and they touch upon these difficult subjects of culture, understanding where religion kicks in. I think if that's done before marriage, and we don't have this rose-tinted lens of idealism, because marriage isn't ideal. If any one of us getting married would be saying we have an idealism to it. We want 6 kids, 10 kids, no kids, travel the world. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's an idealism to it. We need to sort of temper that with the families that are around, with the brothers and sisters that maybe we're close to, if we're converts, reverts, to discuss some of these nuances that will come up during the marriage, to avoid some of the horrific examples and experiences that Sister Tyra has had, to
So,
avoid.
can I make some trouble now? Because you know what
Yeah,
you know what I'm like with you.
go ahead.
Everything you said, everything Abdurrahim Green has said, there is a common factor there, common denominator. The families, and then the father. What about people like me who don't have any of that? Any of
Okay.
that? I'm not involved in that. You can't put me into that section. I've there's no imam to support me. There's nobody. So where do I fit into that?
That's a very good question. And
Where?
I would have to ask you back a question,
Go on.
because I won't want to proffer something assuming it. What
Go on.
would you like to accommodate, facilitate, support you in that regard? Because that would be a choice that you would have to make now. Because if your father's not there, and there's no family member, then you are the author of that next step. You could say, I want an imam, I want a brother, I don't want anyone, I want to be able to speak. That goes, the question
I
goes
don't
back.
have
I mean,
that choice. I don't
my
think I have
default
that choice.
advice position would be to, you know, you find someone, a respected person from your husband's, you know, whatever ethnic, racial background, yeah, that, you know, he's going to listen to, that who's going to be sympathetic to what you have to say. That would
I'm
usually,
talking as far as
you know, he's
to
going to
marry.
support you.
Who
Yeah.
would I go to? Who would
To
protect
marry.
me? Yeah, so let's just say, oh, I want to marry. Who do I go to? I don't have anybody that I can say to you that I would go to. There is nobody.
Yeah,
I
but
sincerely tell you, there's nobody that I would choose to advocate for me. I can remember before meeting Yusuf's father, anybody I approached, they wanted me for themselves. I didn't even get that far to even fill out an application form. I go into the masjid and the imam would be like, why you want him? You have me. I have money. And I'm saying it like that with that accent because that's how flippant it was. I don't know you. You're a sheikh. And I've been brought to you. And that was hard enough getting myself to you, to be sitting in an audience with brothers. And I'm not somebody who does that. And then to be told before I even get to the form or get to tell this brother what my profile is, marry me, sister. It's dishonorable. It really is. And I know so many sisters that have just left the deen because they don't know how to find a husband. We'll just go and get ourselves a man then. So everything you've said, I totally relate to it, but it does not advocate for me. I am on my own. I have nobody representing me. Who would I go to that's not going to take advantage of me?
But sister, I think this is I mean, it's all part of the same question, you know, but in a sense, it's slightly different because what we're talking about is how people from your own culture have turned their back on you.
Yeah.
You know, I guess people need to know what they're getting into, and it's good that you're, you know,
And I'm sorry
it's
to
good that
interject
you're
my
saying
comments
that
about my
because
son.
you know what, if you're going to go down that route, this is what might end up happening, right?
Yeah.
Now there should be people in the community who are supporting you. There should be people who are in the community who are helping you. Like, what are we going to do about stuff like that generally? Well, that's a whole different question.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think honestly, I'm 100% sure that not every imam, you know, not every imam is corrupt. Not every imam has a bad attitude. I think probably a lot of them are really good, decent people, and there are good communities and people who will help you. Mate, I wouldn't say you just been
I'm not
unfortunate.
advocating for myself. I'm advocating for a lot of sisters who are in my situation. We're just forgotten. We are the sisters that are forgotten. We really are. And Abdul, me and you have conversed for hours on the same topic. Have we not? Where is my wali? I mean, from the time your father, you know, vindicates himself and says,
sister, that your wali should be your wali should, I mean, you know, if we're just from a fiqh perspective, you're right. I mean, the wali should be the imam or the, you know, the Muslim authority, either the Sharia council or a respected scholar. You know, they're the authority who, in the absence of a ruler or a king who's Muslim or whatever, they're supposed to represent you. I think it's just about finding the right group of people who do that for sisters like you, and I'm sure they're out there. It's like a lot of these things.
We needed like a yellow page.
You know, our community is messed up. Like, how many times, Abdul Haq and sister, I'm sure you're the same. You know, you get requests, find me a husband, find me someone to marry. I have to say to people, look, with all respect, I'm not a marriage I don't run a marriage service. Like, what do you think? I have a list of people that I'm just like, do you know what it's like to run? So, I mean, this is just getting people married. It's such a problem, right? It's a big struggle, right? You know, it is a real struggle. And I know lots of people out there who are listening are sharing, having this exact, you know, who am I going to get my daughter married to? Who can I get my son married to? There's no systems in place for the most basic things that were taken for granted, you know, back home or whatever that was. So, yeah, we're still going through, you know, a lot of growing pains as a community of Muslims living in the West. This is just all part and parcel of it, sister. Yeah. It's all part and parcel. So we have to be, you know, like we have a saying, you know, we need to find solutions. Yeah. Not there's no point talking about, okay, you've got to raise the problem.
We look for solutions.
Me and Abdul, sister, you need to find, you've got the experience, right. So you need to formulate the solution. Who's better than you, right? Who better than you?
Don't
Yeah.
marry at this stage. When if you're not
No,
comfortable,
but don't.
don't
I'm
marry.
not talking about you personally, sister.
No, I know,
Don't
in
put your
general.
own personal
Yeah.
situation
Yeah,
aside
in
and
general.
think about what is the communal solution for the problem, for the challenge. I don't even like to say the word problem, for the challenge of sisters like you. All right, what can we do? Right? Do we rehabilitate your parents to get them back on board and to make them realize, you know, they made a mistake by turning their back on you? That's
After
one possibility.
27 years, I don't think
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I'm not saying you
Oh, no,
personally,
I
sister.
understand that. Yeah,
Not you personally.
I know.
I'm just saying, what processes can we
Yeah.
follow, right, in order to generically help people who are in your situation, right?
One of the
And
things,
who better than someone who's been through that situation? No one's going to feel as passionately about it as you. No one. There's no
Abdurrahim,
one. Yeah.
I'm really glad you've raised that, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to actively think of solutions as we're speaking. This would have to come. Sister Tyra would know, and brothers and sisters from the South Asian community, with regards to your parents and your father. And I think it's really painful at the stage of life that he must be at and we are at. We haven't got the rest of the world, the rest of the years, another 40, 50 years. Allah knows best. What if elders from similar backgrounds, similar communities, were to convene in a very diplomatic way and to approach not just Sister Tyra's parents, but parents who have been have distanced themselves from their children. And the children themselves have learned or said, okay, they may still be in a happy interracial marriage. They may have divorced. But to try and have that reconnection from parents or adults from that, elders from that community, going to them patiently over time and reminding them of the deen, reminding them of their children. And if nothing comes of that, at least a proof is established that that effort was made and that that daughter, that son wanted to reconcile with their parents. That's an idea that I would have. I'm looking. Before we think Sister Zamzam and Shakil and all the examples that they've been writing and bringing up have been fantastic. I think some of the brothers have been mentioning successive interracial marriages. So while there are the problems, and one of the things that we do as Muslims, and this is not speaking to Sister Tyra in this instance, I think it's just really brave, I have to say this, that her coming on, speaking so eloquently, Allahumma barik, and speaking to this, because not many sisters would, has raised something that is really, really important. But what we need to look at overwhelmingly in this regard here, and if I was to ask Sister Tyra and Abdurrahim now, and Sister Tyra in particular, interracial marriage is the way to go. That doesn't mean I'm talking against cultural marriages. It is the way to go. It's something the Prophet ﷺ spoke about. We see ayats in the Quran endorsing it. Look at the ummah. It wouldn't be as diverse and rich as it is if it wasn't for interracial marriage. And I will hand it to you, Abdurrahim, to conclude with Sister Tyra on what's been a really, really fascinating discussion, especially because of Sister Tyra's input on this occasion.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, sister. You know, I'm unfortunately I missed the first half an hour, so I have to go back and listen
I wasn't
to
playing. I was being really harsh with Abdulhaq.
Oh, that's good. I'm definitely going to listen to that because that sounds good to me. me and him have some good arguments, all in the best. But you know, Jazakallah khair, sister. You know, inshallah, look, we need to work together on finding a solution for this issue that you've raised. Very, very important, inshallah. And I think there are multiple solutions, inshallah. We shouldn't give up. We shouldn't get despondent. And I think, you know, it's one of those things, just because, I mean, you have proven that just because you've had one bad experience, it didn't put you off. Yeah. You kept going.
Islam was there before.
Exactly. So you know what? Don't let we all.
You know.
Yeah.
The La ilaha illallah is there from the beginning.
Anyway. Alhamdulillah. So listen, from me, it's just like, brothers and sisters, I'm a big advocate. I'm a big pro interracial marriage. Just be aware, comes with its issues. That's it for me. That's it for me. And Jazakallah khair from my part. It's been awesome having you on, Sister Tyra and Abdulhaq. Great seeing you again. Sorry I joined you late, guys. Yeah, that's it from me. So I'll pass it on to Sister Tyra and then Abdulhaq. Jazakallah khair.
Wa fika barakallah. So for me, Abdulhaq, I would like to just stress to the sisters, try to involve as many family members as you can, starting with your father. Give your father the right he deserves. Absolutely give him the right. Don't rush into anything, and don't think that this is a Mills and Boons kind of sequence of events, that it's going to be all hunky-dory, bells and everything like that. Try not to make any decisions without people of wisdom being involved in there. Otherwise, you're going to end up like me, a forgotten sister. And I'm saying that with a heavy heart, light with the tongue, but you need to make sure that you understand, as sisters, you are queens. You deserve the best. You deserve your haqq. You deserve to be treated with respect, even if you're the first wife, second wife, third wife, fourth wife. And if you don't get your haqq, La ilaha illallah, there is nobody worthy of worship except Allah. We came from Him and we're going to return to Him. So whoever chooses not to validate us, not to give us our due, La ilaha illallah, we are going back to a place where no one is going to hurt us and we will get recompense. And I say that with a really heavy heart. My brother Abu Haq knows where I'm coming from. Fight for your rights and go into the marriage with certainty, with knowledge, but you need to take those that have wisdom. And when they're telling you no, that no must be from Islam, not because the person's white, yellow, green, or yellow man. It's got to be because they have a trait in Islam that is not recommended, and take from them. They see what we do not see. So I don't have any regrets. I have beautiful children. I have 2 grandsons, and I'm an element, I'm a produce of what I've been through. So I would say to you, sisters, you are queens. Fight for your haqq. And if you don't get it, sit back, tawakkal Allah, trust in Allah, and you will have your haqq, even if it's not in this life. But never give up on your salah, never give up on your dhikr. Allah has us, and Allah is our guardian, and for me, sufficient.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Tyra. I want to conclude by everyone really listening to and going back and listening to this episode and what Sister Tyra has spoken about. And the reason I say this, not just about the content, because when we look, not knocking anyone else, not knocking other sisters or criticizing any other sisters, well, I am inadvertently, I suppose. Let's just put it that way. To have a balance where we're talking about a very sensitive sister on board in Sister Tyra, talking all starry-eyed, rosy-eyed. We haven't got her on the other end bemoaning, anti-man, screaming from the rooftops.
That's
Everyone,
part two.
sisters run for the hills. We haven't got her saying that.
No.
Sister Tyra said a lot more.
Marriage is beautiful.
What we're seeing is a balance, and I want everyone, brothers, because some brothers can get really patriarchal and misogynistic in some instances. Sisters can get really feminine, anti-feminine, whatever it is. You've heard a balance today that even I know Sister Tyra from communicating for a number of years. We've never met, mashallah, tabarakallah, but knowing of the circles that we traverse, this was a balanced perspective. I hope Abdurrahim and myself have done justice.
Definitely.
Counter the balance of our sister. And I want you all to hear again as well, brothers particularly, and sisters, we've got to really elevate and support when we hear goodness coming from each other, because we are in a culture that we've adopted from the West, where it's a vulture culture and it's fighting, killing, shouting, putting out, metaphorically speaking, about killing. And today we've heard succinctness, balance, and eloquence. And I'll conclude on that before Abdurrahim in my speech takes it away from the eloquence and we get all gutter, which we don't usually do, but we might end up doing that sort of nonsense after we've heard such eloquence from our sister. So I'm going to say to you all, Jazakumullah khair, to Sister Tyra, Brother Abdurrahim for getting on board, Sister Zamzam, Octavia,
Shaks.
Shakil,
she's asking so much advice in this. I'm sorry we didn't get to the questions.
So many of you have come on, and I was reading the comments. That's why you saw me a bit distracted. And the contribution is, this is what makes this show. Okay, this is what makes this show, mashallah. So, Jazakumullah khair to everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week. Sister Tyra, if we invite you back in the near future, would you be willing to come, or you're going to run for the hills?
Only if you allow for me to be ghetto, as in, you need to let me free, let me roam free, as in, don't gag me and let me say what I have to say.
I hope
And
we
I know
haven't.
I sound like I've been really controversial, but sisters, I'm not negative with marriage. There's nothing better than my husband coming home and me taking off his shoes, because it means if I can please my Lord, my man, my king in this life, I will please Allah. So don't think for a minute I don't love marriage. If you can serve your husband, food, whatever it is, there's no better feeling for a woman to feel that she's fulfilled her husband's rights. That's your Jannah.
Jazakallah khair. I don't think there's nothing else, anything else to say beyond that point.
You know,
Yeah,
just
bro.
come back from Jamaica.
You're gonna
so
mess
I've
it up, bro.
got
You
my
just gotta leave it on that good note. Leave it on that high,
Definitely,
that
definitely.
exalted note. Mashallah.
We will see you next week, and we will definitely,
Inshallah.
will honor us, have her back with us in the near future.
Inshallah.
Some
Allah.
other things, and mashallah, honors all ours, mashallah, tabarakallah, and you will be free to say as you want and express as you've done today, inshallah. So everyone, jazakallah.
Salam alaikum.
He's just got back from Jamaica, and that's the reason why.
I'm going to go back into the lecture theatre, so I feel like the urge to detox. Abdul Haq, I've been doing this to you all day, haven't I? I just feel the urge. And they thought I was Jamaican. That's what made me laugh. They didn't even know, there was no colouring for them. So yeah, I feel I've got to detox.
We've had Abdul Rahim with his Guyanese perspective, you with your Jamaican perspective, and you know what? I'm just going to keep it street and ghetto.
All right, yeah, bruv.
You know.
Doctor,
over
doctor
and out then.
street, keep it real, babe. With that doctor in front of your name. No, nothing more ghetto than that, bruv. Doctor, yeah.
I suppose that diminishes it somewhat, doesn't it? Yeah.
All right, bro. All right, guys, come on, that's it now. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.